as we've been reporting today, some very strong language from the American ambassador to South Africa, who said today that the South African government, or basically a Russian ship, docked in the country, and they believe it came basically to collect weapons from this country to aid in Russia's war in Ukraine. The ANC's apparent dismissal of Agoa and Pepfar agreements with the United States also came up in the briefing held by the ambassador today. Let's get the view of Dr. David Monyae, director at the Center for Africa, China. A very good evening to you, sir. Welcome to the program. So, the president was asked a question about this today. He didn't confirm or deny it. What should we read into that?
I think this is quite simple, and I've listened to your earlier analyst. I think he was completely out of the whole thing. The president was speaking at a time when the ambassador went on a press briefing. And it is impossible for the president to get briefing while he's seated and giving an impression in Parliament. And it is unfair that the ambassador took a diplomatic move to speak in the manner in which he did. I think since his appointment, he has been doing this in an arrogant way, not following diplomatic channels. Sensitive matters of this nature are handled in a diplomatic. It's something that he knows. He's a well-experienced ambassador. One wonders why he considers to speak as if he's in the United States. I mean, he looks at South Africa as if it's a U.S. province of some sort or a colony. It's unacceptable, it's arrogant, and it's unbecoming of an ambassador to do so.
How should it have been handled?
There are diplomatic ambassadors speak through DERCO, and there are channels that are used that are well known, well established. And one expects the South African government to respond in the strongest possible way. You can't allow an ambassador to speak in a sovereign state in the manner in which he did. It is unacceptable. I don't think South African ambassador is able to speak in the manner in which he did in the United States. And therefore, for us to just accept what he said, whether he's right or wrong, he has to follow certain diplomatic ways of expressing this kind of statement. There has been statements from United States Embassy on possible terrorist attacks, we all know, or claims of ESCOM collapsing. I mean, these are negative moves from the U.S. in terms of destabilizing the country. It's unacceptable, and it has to be said. And one expects the government to come quite strongly and not encourage this kind of misbehavior.
Will it really? South Africa is not known for responding strongly, shall we say, to some of these incidents. Why would this time be different?
It really depends how the president and all relevant ministries look into this matter. These are serious allegations that he has made. I think this allegation has to be tested. He or his embassy has to give evidence to all these allegations that he has made and go beyond that. I think the South African government has to make it quite clear and register its dismay in terms of the manner in which he handles constantly on South African platform. He speaks in the manner in which he does. It speaks of bullying, and there are disagreements. United States is a very important country to South Africa in terms of trade. Your previous analyst has touched on that. But even if that is the case, you don't have to bully a country in the manner in which it has been happening in the last 6 months.
So then, if this did indeed happen, because we're told, according to the Americans, these weapons would have been shipped off to Russia late last year in December, would the South African government not have had an obligation to go public with such information, especially when you consider the context between the Russians and the Ukrainians?
One does not really fully know since we don't have the information. But looking at the record of South Africa since 1994, there hasn't been any way that South Africa has sold weapons to a warring country or countries for that matter. We have had lots of crises, including our closest allies as Angola, where we could not sell weapons to Angola due to the fact that there was a conflict in that country. What will South Africa benefit selling weapons to Russia at this stage? one wonders, I mean, I doubt very much, personally, I doubt very much if this is the case.
So if it is the case, Doctor, how damaging then would it be to that history which you've just pointed out? And South Africa repeatedly saying it's a non-aligned country in what's going on since Russia invaded Ukraine. It said it still believes going back to the negotiating table is the best way to get out of this crisis. So where would this leave that argument and the position?
Indeed, South Africa has been advancing a peaceful resolution to the conflict. It has made numerous occasions, announcements. President Ramaphosa has spoken to both Ukrainian president as well as President Putin, and in different forums, the UN and everywhere else, South Africa has made it quite clear that the best way of resolving that conflict is through a peaceful mediation of the crisis, instead of pouring weapons, of which South Africa has been criticizing NATO, and it cannot do that while at the same time selling weapons to Russia. But I mean, just put it quite clearly, Russia has much more stronger, powerful weapons than South Africa. Why would Russia want to buy weapons from South Africa? I mean, one wonders what kind of weapons that we're talking about that Russia doesn't have. This is the smoke screen in my own view.
Dr. David Monyae, on that point, thank you so much for being on the program tonight.